Welcome, everyone, to the L7C podcast. Today, we are continuing our special Women's History Month podcast, where today we have our pop culture guru, Chelsea Heppert, with us today. How are you doing today?
I'm good. How are you?
I am doing well, and this is our second podcast in person.
Yeah. Oh my God, that's crazy.
Yeah, because your first one was in person, and then the past couple ones have been remotely. So this one we got to do in person.
Mm-hmm.
So today, as we said, continuing Women's History Month, women-focused podcast. Chelsea was actually the one who came up with what we're going to be talking about today, which is actually a very important topic in society, especially for women. So Chelsea, what are we talking about today?
We are going to be talking about being a person or a woman without kids, and how it affects our friendships, work life, what some family expectations is, and our family expectations are. Oh my God, can we restart?
I got you. But yeah, so we're going to be talking about women who don't have kids in the workplace and friends and family and how they interact with each other. But when I asked you what we were going to talk about, this was not what I expected you to say. I'm happy for it because it's a very important topic, but I was not expecting this.
Really? What were you expecting?
Because Brittany, that's been a little bit quiet. I thought you were going to go maybe the Kardashian.
Ooh, yeah.
I thought you were going to go Kardashian route with potentially now ex-boyfriend claiming kind of ownership type ordeal thing, or like Lindsay Lohan or Amanda Bynes. I wasn't expecting this, which is a very serious thing. So what made you think of this topic?
I mean, it's kind of come up a few times in my life, especially over the last month, I would say. It really started because I had to ask a few of my friends, if am I overreacting by getting mad at this text message? But one of my friends texted me last month, and her first two sentences were hello, and then I am trying to think of my friends without kids who, and then the rest of our conversation. But the fact that it was I am trying to think of my friends without kids, that it just irritated me, because it was kind of, we haven't talked in a very long time, so you're only thinking of me because of this one singular reason. Mm-hmm. Two, it could have just been left out for the question that you were asking. And three, I still have other responsibilities even though I don't have kids. My life and my hobbies and interests and things like that are just as important. So my first reaction was just what is happening? And then I was annoyed, and then I talked to a few of my friends about it, and they were also annoyed. And granted, these are friends who don't have kids and don't necessarily plan to have kids or are going to wait to have kids. But it was still just such a random thing for it to be phrased that way. And then it's also come up in work a few times. Yes, in terms of adding other responsibilities to those who don't have kids, but then taking away responsibilities from someone who does have a kid, because I work with a multitude of people who either do have kids or don't, and one individual, she does have a child who's super, super cute, but they didn't want to give her an extra task or an extra responsibility because of that, even though this person is more than capable and actually would have really liked it. So it was one of those, oh, this goes both ways, but also, why are we putting so much pressure on this? So yeah.
Wow.
Long-winded.
I don't think it was that long-winded. So I guess when you said that topic, and when you said that's what we're going to be talking about, I had to do some research and stuff, and it's a very still to this day a hot button issue with women.
Even if you try to look certain things up, you have to dig. Just doing a simple Google search of women without children in the workplace, not that many things are going to pop up. And what does pop up is from 2017, 2016, 2015. It's not anything recent. It's no one actually talks about it or acknowledges that there are more pressures and responsibilities of people without kids to absorb.
So when I was looking this stuff up, I tried to do it from like how a person would feel to like job and stuff, how that affected them. So like I saw stuff from Meghan Markle, Michelle Obama, who they said like the number one responsibility that they have, the title is mom. So then there was people who don't have kids, like these prominent women are saying that's their top responsibility. They're just like, well, am I less because I don't have kids? Or when you're in your friend group or whatever and you're the only one who doesn't have kids, does that make you feel less? Or which you actually said on the dating one that you don't want to have kids, does that make you a lesser commodity than another woman who does want to have kids if everything's the same? So it's like those type of things. And it's not, we still normalize the fact that a woman's primary purpose is to have a child. Like that's still like a thing that's out now. And if a woman doesn't have a child, it's like
you're looked down upon, and women don't have children for a multitude of reasons. Like me personally, I would be a terrible mother. I don't have the patience. I will be a really great aunt. I will be a great godmother. And I babysat a child the other week. That was exciting. She's still alive. We colored. I taught her about an exclamation point. But I personally don't, I've never wanted kids. I've never seen that for myself. But people don't have kids for many reasons. Some people literally can't, and that's okay. And by assuming that, oh, you don't have children, you can do this, you don't know what's going on. You don't know the reasons why they can't have children. You shouldn't be asking. You just got married. When are you guys going to have kids? Like, that's insane. Absolutely insane to me. Like, first of all, kids alone, you're talking about someone's sex life and potentially their bodies and their reproductive struggles or lack of struggles. Like, hello? That's really invasive. So
I did see something who she is prominent, who always gets talked about that way with not having kids, of Jennifer Aniston.
Yes, I was literally, her name popped into my head when you were saying that.
Yeah, because she doesn't have kids, and every couple of years there'll be a rumor mill if she's going to have a kid, if she's going to adopt a child. And she did say a quote like where it's like I don't have a child, but you guys then diminish all the things that I've done.
Yeah.
Like my career, because I don't have a child, and I don't. There's nothing wrong with having a child. There's nothing wrong with not wanting to have a child. But since I don't want a child, it's like you diminish me, which I felt was that wasn't good, to diminish a woman's career just because they have a child or they don't have a child.
Yeah, and then there's like this huge expectation of, or projection of, you're not going to feel fulfilled in life unless you do have a child. And that's not necessarily like Jennifer Aniston. Her career is amazing. If that's what brings her fulfillment, that's it. She doesn't need anything else. She doesn't need society to dictate whether or not, because she doesn't have kids or potentially could want to have kids, like that doesn't define you and your happiness and what your purpose is, you know?
Yeah, I agree. And then also too, even the professionals, when I was reading stuff like doctors and nurses, where if a girl goes to the doctor and like they're like, hey, I don't want to have kids, I want to have this procedure so and so, especially if you're in your 20s, they try and talk you out of it. They're like, are you sure you want to do this? I mean, you're in your 20s, so you might change your mind. You don't want to do something you don't want to reverse, and you're just like, no, I want to do this, and they're still like,
they drag their
are
feet.
you sure? And then sometimes they're just like, how about you think about it first, come back in like a couple years. And like I saw that there's doctors who have done that with women too, like making them second guess if they want to do this.
Yeah, so I have an IUD. I have a 5-year one. The next time I go to my gyno, I'm going to talk to him about starting that process of permanently not being able to have kids, knowing that I have another 3 years of my IUD, because if I start it now, by the time I'm ready to actually have the IUD taken out and ready, I will be in my 30s at that point. So they'll take me more seriously. It'll be a conversation that's documented for several years. So again, they'll take me seriously and hopefully it'll happen. The fact that I have to think that far ahead to do something with my body that I know that I want it's really sad. And there's also subreddits and things like that where women can actually look up doctors in their state who are willing to perform this.
Okay.
It's not invasive. Like, it is, but it isn't. Like, we've come a long way with the procedures and with medicine, so it's not super risky depending on the type of procedure you get. But doctors refuse to do this because it has to do with a woman's reproductive system.
So I know you talked about like the text that happened recently.
Yeah.
But do your own friends, do your immediate friends, your closest one, make you feel any less, or because you don't want kids? Like, have you felt that in like your immediate group, or has it just been like not your immediate, but like your group after that?
I think it's been the group after that, in the sense of my immediate group. There's only two people, one person who is likely going to have kids within the next few years, and then the other will have kids later on. But I think a few of my friends, like, who have recently had kids or have had kids a few years ago, there is that weird pressure, and it's that expectation. And it's also hard too, because there's the other element of, at the time, like, I was single. Like, right now I do have a boyfriend, yay. But it's also like that you're single, you don't have kids, you're in your late 20s.
Yeah,
like,
that's where it really gets.
And then it's like you're almost looked down upon of not having your life together.
Mm-hmm.
If that makes sense. It's like, why don't you have those things yet? And it's like, because if I did, I'd probably be divorced at this point. Like, if I got married in my early 20s, I would be divorced. So I've definitely experienced it, but I've also experienced it too of my life is at a different point than theirs, so it's kind of hard to talk about things. Like, it's their children are their priorities, which absolutely it needs to be. But that sometimes makes, like, the friendship part of life a little bit more difficult. Not in a bad way, not in a, oh, we're never going to be friends again, or, oh, I can't go to you for things, but it's significantly different.
Yeah, I think with that one, I can't speak on the friends there who do have kids, but that's on a balancing.
Yeah.
Like a balancing, obviously, like your kid is going to be your priority, but there are couples, millions around the world who are able to balance all of the stuff they need to do and still be that friend for you, or you to them.
Like, we absolutely don't need to go out. I'm a grandma. I'm in in my bed at 10 p.m. But do I want to have a conversation that doesn't necessarily involve children?
Yeah.
Or do I want to go get breakfast with you and just be with you? Like, yeah, absolutely. We can go back and hang out with the child later. That's fine. But I just want friendship.
Oh, that makes. So from that friendship thing going to now, like, the workplace, where you even just talked about the example of giving, like, more work to someone who doesn't have kids, the person who does have kids, which I think is also a problem too, because they assume that since you don't have kids, or in a different case, you don't have kids, you're not with someone, you're going home to nothing. While the person they're like, oh yeah, you could stay longer. It's not like you're going home to anything type.
Yeah.
Which can be very hurtful to your co-working people.
It's hurtful to your coworkers, like, to assume that. It's also hurtful to that person's mental health. Like, there are nights where I come home and I don't have any responsibility. I can just come home. And that's wonderful. But if somebody says something, I'm just like, oh, I'm alone. I'm home. I have 2 cats. Yay. But then it's like, I have 2 cats and I can make myself dinner and I can do my nails and I can read if I want to. I can do a whole slew of things. I go on hikes. Like, just because I don't have someone or something to come home to doesn't mean I don't have other interests. I'm still a human being. Like, you know, it's such a weird conversation. And then that expectation. I also have family. What if I want to go see my mom?
And that's true. Everyone has family.
You know, like, there's other expectations. And we all have obligations outside. They don't need to know that, but it's rude of them to assume that, oh, you don't have anyone, you don't have a kid. You can do this, or you can stay later if I ask you to, or you can do this report really quick, or you can publish this, or do whatever, and then all of a sudden you're just doing, and you're overworked. and burnt out.
And then on the flip side, too, with the women who do have kids and they get passed up on opportunities because they're like, oh, you're not going to want to work harder because you have a child.
Yep.
So it's like, in that argument, there's no winning either way. The person's getting more work because they don't have kids at home, and the people who want to get more work and get more opportunities do have kids, so they're getting passed by. So it's like, neither side is winning.
Correct. And we also, this was an issue a few years ago in my workplace, and it was kind of it was a minor, like, stupid issue, but someone couldn't come in because their pet was sick, which sparked the whole debate of, is that a valid reason to miss work? They didn't have kids, they weren't married, but they had pets. But if another coworker's kid was sick, that's seen as a valid reason. Like, if one of my cats needs to go to the vet and they need to go, I'm dropping everything. So that actually came up, and one of my bosses was very much like, if your pet's sick, you are still expected to come into work. That has since changed, but at that time it was, they're not your, like, priority, like, you can still come into work. So that was an interesting moment in time.
So going back to, like, the friends, I don't know if you've experienced this, but, like, if you were with your friends going out to eat lunch or going to go see a movie, and, like, everyone in your friend group at that time has a child and you're the only one who doesn't, and then you get those awkward looks from strangers like, oh, she's the only one who doesn't have a kid with her, or she doesn't have a partner with her at this point in time. She's like, obviously the low end of the friend group.
Yeah, or, like, there's no ring on her finger too.
Yeah, or there's no ring on her finger and everyone else there is married, so she's obviously the bottom feeder of the group. Oh,
ooh, the bottom feeder.
I mean, I've like, when I was reading articles, I saw people talk about those type of experiences, so I feel like they're pretty common.
Oh, it's very common. It's awkward. It's so awkward. Because you just see, like, a line of people with kids or husbands or whoever, and then this one person. And it's so awkward being that one person. Like, if you make it a point to hang out with your friends, like, who are married or have kids or whatever the case may be, like, sometimes it's nice just to see your friend and not everyone else. Obviously, like, I love going out and hanging out with my friends and their husbands, and I love hanging out with some children. Others, not so much. But it's so hard, because then for me, like, I often wonder of, like, oh, did this poor person, like, get saddled with being the lonely person again? Like, do they have to go through this, or is this like, oh, like, did they actually choose this, you know? But those looks definitely happen. And then you also get the looks from, like, older women.
Oh.
That, I think, is more common. Because
that's, I mean, generation-wise, that is what they were, like, the primary goal was to be a mom, and it's shifted to this, like, current, like, era. So it's just like when they see someone who doesn't have a kid, like, when they look at them, it's like, well, when I was their age, I already had 3 kids, running the house, doing a job, and then they're just sitting there on God knows what. So yeah, they do look down.
Yeah, they absolutely do. I had the scary realization when I turned 28 of I was the same age that my mom was when she had me. And that was terrifying. Like, I don't know how she did that. Kudos to you, Joan. But it's hard, like, especially with that generational gap and having other women not look down on you, but question you, I think is, like, the more appropriate way to look at it. Of just like, oh, you don't want kids? And they see that as the just extreme view of life. Like, how can you not want kids? Because it's so ingrained in our society.
Yeah, your goal is to reproduce, repopulate the planet, nurture the kids so that they can go out and do what they need to do, and then, like, that's...
Or the thing of, like, well, who's going to take care of you when you're older?
Yeah.
That is also, like, if you ask people, oh, why did you have kids? Well, they can take care of me when I'm older. I took care of them when they were babies. Now they can repay the favor. Like, I've heard that so many times, and it's mind-boggling. It's like, there's nursing homes there's other options. You can take care of yourself up until a certain point, but then you should plan for that and not just rely on your children, because that's a lot of undue stress.
It is. And then from the other thing, which you did talk about on the dating one, obviously, like the dating market, because obviously bringing up that you don't want to have kids, there's no real right time to bring that up when you're especially on a first date or
I feel like
dating
that's
someone.
A third date conversation, or if you have an app, like there is a setting that you can put of like have kids, don't have kids,
nice.
Don't want kids, open to kids.
But then what does that do to like a woman if they like keep meeting great guys or girls who they want to be with, but they're just like, the person's like, hey, I want to have kids, and you're like, hey, I don't want to, and the person's like, all right, well, bye, and you keep like losing out on those great partners. That has to do something to like your psyche. Like, is this really the reason I'm going to potentially never be with anyone if I don't find someone who doesn't want to have kids?
I have never thought that way. Just in terms of, to me, the kids topic is something that you absolutely have to agree upon. It's not something that you can go into saying, oh, I want kids, but you don't, but I love you. Like, let's still get married. Because ultimately, it's going to come up again. There's going to be the societal pressure, the familial pressure, like your own relationship pressure to either have kids or not. So I've always been, if they did want kids or decided that they want kids, like, that's fine. I'm not going to stand in your way. I am not going to be the reason why you miss out on that opportunity if that's something you truly want. However, if you change your mind in the middle of a relationship, like, that's absolutely hard. But I don't think it's fair for either person to stay in that relationship.
Yeah, because I feel like that's even harder. Like when you're in a relationship and you both decide you don't want to have kids, but then one of your partner's siblings or cousins or
mothers,
best friends, or shoot, even mothers, has another child or something like that, and then the one person's just like, oh, I want a kid, and you're like, and then like they're on baby fever, and it's just like that makes relationships even harder.
Yeah, I personally have never been offended if you start talking to someone and then they do say that they want kids and it doesn't work out. I think ultimately that's the best decision for both parties. And especially if they know 100% like you do or do not want kids, there's not going to be any power that changes someone's mind besides like their own mind, you know?
Does it matter if for the people who don't want kids, if they don't want their own kids going through the whole process, or like adoption, like if they try and sway someone, does that like, oh, we don't have to have kids, but we could adopt? Like,
I think if both parties are open to it, because I've jokingly said like the only way I would ever have kids is if I adopt or become a stepmom. Like I know that I've jokingly said that, and if I did adopt, like that's great, but I don't see myself doing that. But I think that's something to talk about, because some people only want their own kid. Like they want to have a child that looks exactly like them. They want to have that ideal, like Americana, like family dream of the 2.5 children, like who look like them and go, oh, there's little Johnny. Look at his nose, just like his father's. You know. So
I guess going forward, because now we're in 2022, let's just say like 10 years from now, do you think it'll change or be more socially acceptable for women to not want to have kids and be treated the same as women who do want to have kids? Or do you think it's going to be?
I think it's absolutely going to change. CNN posted like the people thought like during the pandemic that there would be a baby boom, but that's not actually the case. I think it's down by 4%, like the amount of births. I think it's becoming a topic that's more talked about, not necessarily studied, but talked about. And I think the more that we talk about it and the more that we acknowledge it and the more that women are willing, or people are willing to fight for their bodies and their right to choose whether or not they have kids, I think we'll see like that transition. And I think it also, is indicative of how we as a country treat people in general. Like if you have kids or not have kids and allowing like those balances, especially work-life balances, I think that needs to be a bigger picture of, okay, why do we put so much pressure on people who do have kids to either come back to work sooner or to be shamed if like they miss a day, but then why do we keep adding responsibilities on people who don't have kids? I think that just says you need to add another role in the company to support all parties.
Yeah. I almost feel like it's for a woman, like damned if you do, damned if you don't.
Yeah.
If you have kids, you're going to get treated differently. If you don't have kids, you're going to be treated differently by a certain group.
Mm-hmm.
So
I absolutely agree with that.
anything else you want to say on this particular topic?
I don't know. Treat people with kindness. No, I think just be more aware of how you say things and when you say things. Just like stemming back from that text message.
Mm-hmm.
Just be more aware of the tone that you take and the way it could be read, and same thing for people without kids. Just be more aware and be more accepting of both sides, I think. And workplaces, just stop it. Stop adding so much pressure to both sides.
Well, since it is Women's History Month, and with all the women who are doing the podcast this month, they get the last word. So, Chelsea, the floor is yours.
Better mop it.
Oh.
I don't know. I don't know what to say.
You can talk about, obviously, Women's History Month. Obviously, thank the listeners. Say what you want to say. It's all yours.
I didn't rehearse this part.
It's okay. You're ad-libbing. You got all the time. Well, not all the time, but
some of the time.
Yeah.
I don't know.
You can thank your fans.
Yeah. Thank you so much for listening and to continuing, to support this podcast and this group. We've had such a fun time, and I'm excited to do more podcasts and to talk about all things social media and all things pop culture, especially the women in pop culture. Like, follow, subscribe, comment. My cats are playing with a toy over there. And yeah, yay being a woman.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the L7C podcast. Be sure to like, rate, review, and subscribe to the channel. Follow us on all social media platforms, and we'll be talking to you guys soon. Take care.